The ground rules are as follows. You'll have 1 minute opening statements, followed by a round of 6 questions that I have, and you will have exactly a couple of minutes to answer them. We don't want political speeches, we want answers. And then we'll have interaction with the audience. It's important to involve the audience. So why don't we begin with your opening statements? Mr. Christopher Arundel.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you so very much to the Caucus of African American Leaders and to all of you. Good evening. I'm retired Colonel Warren Christopher. I'm a 24-year combat veteran from the United States Army. And I served all around our great country and all around the world in defense of a grateful nation. I'm also a single dad of 2 beautiful and talented daughters. And I just happen to be so blessed to have my youngest daughter here with me this evening from college. She came in today from Hampton University. Ashley, would you please stand up and say hello to everybody? You'll after I retired from the Army in 2011 after 24 years of service, I was selected to be the Chief of Staff at the Department of the Interior, where I led business enterprise for the entire federal government, more than $57 billion in procurement and acquisitions. I didn't stop there. I had the great fortune to work for Senator Clinton and a number of other senators, bipartisan senators in the United States Senate, on very important committees like the Veteran Affairs Committee, on the Small Business Committee, and the Senate Armed Services Committee. I've been an avid mentor and coach in the community, and I've started my own nonprofit called Black Boys Strong to deal with the many issues in our community when it comes to crime and violence, when it comes to mentoring and coaching and domestic violence. I am seeking to be your representative in Congress because I believe that it's time for servant leadership. I believe that it's time for us to stop doing business as usual. I also believe in term limits because I believe that it is time for fresh vision and perspective. And so I'm asking for your vote, and I'd like to be your servant leader, and I look forward to discussing with you how I can deliver on job creation, on issues important to women, like equal pay for equal work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Jocelyn Peña-Melnick. It's a long name. Just remember the hyphenated name of Jocelyn. And for the last 9 years, I've been representing both Prince George's and Arundel County in the 21st District. Many of you know me. You know I'm not shy and I speak up. For the last 9 years, I've been able to meet the families of this district and know their struggles. For the last 9 years, I have taken on corporations. Just look at my voting record. I have also voted for gun control. I voted for equal pay for equal work. I voted to increase the minimum wage. And I will do that at the national level as well. I want to bring that passion and that commitment to this district. Those of you that know me, if you write me, I answer you. If you call me, I answer you, even if it's at midnight. I believe in constituency service, and I believe in being present. Because you know what? When we win, if I win, I will be in the minority. You can't really get much done legislatively, let's just be honest. But I will do excellent constituent work, and I will be present in the community. When that person is losing their house, or they need their bill paid, I will be there, and it's what I've done for 9 years. I will love your vote on April 26th. Please vote for Jocelyn Peña-Melnick. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Robert Broadus. I am running for the Republican nomination for the 4th Congressional District. I am a Navy veteran, 5 years in the United States Navy, and I am an IT professional by trade. I have 2 lovely children, and I am running to be your representative because I believe that our government has gone astray from its intended purpose. When we read the Declaration of Independence, we know those well-spoken lines. We know these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. That's the first truth. That they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. That's the second. That the third is, among these truths are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the fourth, to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the government. So the purpose of government is to secure our rights. And the powers of government come not because someone on high in Washington, D.C. has decided to send an edict, but because you, the people, have given your consent to that form of government. I wish to go to Washington, D.C. to make sure you are not governed by laws.
Thank you. Time.
You guys ain't playing around here. I'll tell you what. Let me open by saying this. I was just asked the other day, I was knocking on a door, voter said, what's the most important issue? A lot of issues out there. I said, but you know what I think the most pressing issue that we face as a people and as a state and as a nation, the persistent, debilitating gaps, disparities, and inequities that exist in our classrooms, in our economy, in our criminal justice system, and in our workforce. So when people ask me, why are you running? Well, I'm running to continue the work to address those disparities. Some of them are founded in racial discrimination, some of them in racial biases. But that's why, as Lieutenant Governor, I work here in the city of Annapolis to create a health enterprise zone at the Blum Senior Apartments. That's why over the last 8 years as Lieutenant Governor, we increased minority participation in small minority and women-owned businesses. When the economy was doing this, we increased contracting from $980 million to $1.6 billion. That's why I led the effort to expand universal pre-K, because I knew not only all kids need to be able to get that early start, but more kids of color don't have access to pre-K. So I run unabashedly to tell you that I'm here not just to level the playing field, but to make sure that if all boats are going to rise as our economy improves, you've got to make sure that every boat is seaworthy. If you got a hole in that boat, you're not going to rise with a lifting tide. So that's addressing the disparities, inequities, and the gaps that exist in our classrooms, our workforce, our criminal justice system, and our society.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, I'm Glenn Ivey. I was state's attorney in Prince George's County for 8 years. And I got into public service at the beginning of my career. I started in 1987 when I went to work on Capitol Hill for Congressman John Conyers. But the reasons I got into public service started way before that. I'm originally from a town called Rocky Mount, North Carolina. I lived there in the 60s. Yeah, there we go, homegirl over there. It was still segregated. And for me, as a young kid, seeing the impact that the civil rights movement made on my life, and I was watching them on TV, Dr. King would have a march, and suddenly we could buy clothes at some of the stores before that we weren't allowed to even go try on clothes before. The schools desegregated. I lived across the street from Booker T. Washington High School, and then we were able to integrate the schools. My mother worked in the schools, and then she could teach at all the other schools as well. My father had been in the Air Force. He came out and put himself through school on the GI Bill, went to Shaw University, and then joined something called Manpower. It was a program that was part of the War on Poverty. He came up and moved up to DC, started working in the Johnson administration, and brought us up with him. So for me personally, the impact of public service of other people really gave me
Time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Minute goes by fast. Yes. Minute can't go fast. Okay, we'll start with the first question, and I'm going to have my timekeeper keep your answers to a minute and a half. So think hard, think quick, and here we go. In your current or past elected or professional positions, have you employed or hired as staff women, African American, and other minority employees? Will you pledge to employ African Americans in significant positions on your congressional staff if elected? And by significant, I mean chief of staff, policy people, etc., not answering the phone. So, please.
Sure. I had the great fortune to hire a lot of people in my career as a senior military officer. But really, I'd like to refer to my most recent experience as the Chief of Staff at the Department of the Interior. But even before I go there, I want to talk about the people that are on my campaign. My deputy campaign manager for field operations is a woman. My deputy campaign manager for finance and administration is a woman. My field director for faith outreach is a woman. My digital media director is a woman. So I have no problems. I got 2 women daughters. So anyway, when I was the chief of staff at the Department of the Interior, I had wide hiring authority. My customer relationships manager that oversaw all customer relationships for 42 federal agencies was a woman. My director of operations was a woman. My executive administrative officer was a woman. And so when I tell you that I am a he or she, when I tell you that I boldly profess to be a male feminist, because I believe that it's about making sure that women get opportunity and access. And again, I got 2 daughters, and so I got a personal stake in this. So I want my
direct question was, what are you going to do about your congressional staff?
Just give me an example.
Yeah, but I want a direct answer.
Yes, I will.
Yes, significant positions, yes or no?
Yes, I will hire women. I demonstrated that I'll hire women, and I'll continue to hire
What
women.
about African Americans and other minorities?
African Americans and other minorities,
Right,
yes.
because you got more than one position that you fill in Congress. You get 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right.
So he's asking for a pledge.
Yes, I'm asking for a pledge that we can hold you to if you get elected.
You have one? Do you hear me?
Yes.
All right, we'll improvise. Look, I'm the only woman out here, and we need to run. Women need to get in these races. We bring a different perspective, okay? You have my pledge, my word that I will be diverse, that I will have a diverse office. My staff in Annapolis is diverse, all right? I have all races, and mostly women. In my campaign, my campaign manager is a woman, my field director is a woman, my financial person is a woman that leads it, my media people are a group of women, and I am a person of color. And that is very important to me. You have my word. But most importantly, you have my word that I will have an office in Anne Arundel County. You have my word that I will have an office in Prince George's County. Because I know that Anne Arundel County feels it neglected. And you know the service I've given. And I've always been here, and that's not going to change. Thank you.
Again, your pledge is significant positions in your congressional office.
Absolutely, 100%. And I
Okay.
understand that you get to hire about 15 people.
That's right.
About 15 people. So you have it. My office will be majority of color and women.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
The simple answer is yes and yes. I chair an organization, a nonprofit, and we have a majority of women. And the question I have to ask is, where are the men? Where are the men who are actually going to get in and get involved? The other founding member of my group is a black man. So yes, me and him together, that's half the group. And here's where I come in. Anyone who will come, anyone who will serve. I grew up in the shadow of Andrews Air Force Base. And one year, they closed down their elementary school. And when they closed down the elementary school, the children from the Andrews Air Force Base came to our school. And so I have, in my closest circle of friends, an Asian, a Filipino, a Hispanic, a white guy, another black guy, and myself. So yes, my staff will look like the population of this district and the population of America.
I take that pledge, and we're all going to take that pledge. Let me tell you my experience. When I was in the Office of Lieutenant Governor, worked on the second floor in Annapolis, 80 employees, 8 of them I hired, 72 the governor hired. 80 employees, there were only 2 black men on the second floor. One of them I hired, and the other one was me. Over the 8 years as Lieutenant Governor, I had 8 staff positions, and over that 8 years, I probably hired about 16 people. Not because they ran away, but, you know, these types of offices, people come. Out of the 16 that I hired, 4 were white men, and the other 12 were Latina, African American, LGBT, some were white, some were not, and some of my employees with disabilities. So when I hire the 18, because that's the number, we can hire 18 full-time staff as a member of Congress and a whole lot of part-time. I've already made the pledge that 2 out of every 3 will be committed to constituent services, and you'll hear a lot about constituent services tonight, because that's probably the most important thing that we can do, and I agree with Delegate Jocelyn Pena-Melnick. Constituent services, it's probably going to be hard to get a lot of legislation done. Constituent services, 2 out of every 3, and my constituent service representatives will reflect the diversity that is the 4th Congressional District.
Thank you. The short answer is yes, I will hire, I think it was minority or African American chief of staff.
Yes, well, no, it was women, other minorities, and specifically when you
Right.
get to Congress, you know, what your seniors, you know, your important staff.
Yeah, I mean, my staff will look like what I've done previously. So when I was state's attorney, for example, I had 2 deputies. One was an African American woman, her name's Patricia Smoot. President Obama appointed her to head the U.S. Parole Commission. Another was a deputy. It was a white male first, then it was a white woman, and then it became a Latino male. His name's Carlos Acosta. He was the first Latino to hold a position like that in, I believe, any state's attorney's office in the state. I hired lots of women, lots of African American women, about 7 of whom are now judges in Prince George's County. One just became a judge in the District of Columbia. So not only do I hire minority staff, I make sure I work hard to help them get to the next step. Whatever they want the next step to be, I help them get there. And I think it's critical to hire people not only that just look like the community, but actually have a sense that live in the community and come from it. Because I think that personal experience really helps to provide the type of insight and connection to the community. I also pledge I'll have an office in Arundel County as well. I want to make sure that, I know there's a sense out here that you're not as well represented. You have 4 different members of Congress that represent Anne Arundel County. I want to work hard to make sure we turn that around. I want to spend a lot of time out here and get to know people better than I do now, so that we can make sure we understand your needs, your concerns, and represent those on Capitol Hill.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Second question, some of you have addressed this, so this will be a yes or no question. Now, a couple of you have said you're going to have an office, but the real question is that office going to stay open for your whole term? So the question is, if you open an office, no matter what Congress does to your budget, will that office be open for your 2-year term and while you're running for election the next time? Yes or no?
Yes.
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 Thank you. Mass incarceration has negatively impacted the African American community since the passage of omnibus crime legislation in the 90s, which has been debated widely in the presidential election. What specific legislative proposals will you offer to reverse the impact of the 90s crime legislation?
Start this way first?
Yeah. Let's try this.
Yes, and when I was state's attorney in Prince George's, we worked hard actually to stem the flow. And here's what we did. Violent criminals definitely wanted to push for incarceration for the long terms because it was really a very serious problem in Prince George's County. We had, in the top year, 173 murders in 1 year. And so, making sure that we got those guys off the street was critical. At the same time, at the other side, we realized we couldn't jail our way out of the problem. We knew we were sending a lot of people to jail and they were coming out sicker and slicker. So we went to intervention and prevention programs to try and get them back on track. If they weren't off track yet, we tried to do tutors and mentors. I did those programs without any tax dollars. We got volunteers from the faith community to come work with Title I schools. And then we worked on reentry. Didn't have any county funding for that. We worked with the faith community and helped them get grants to help guys who were coming back out. With respect to legislation, there are a number of criminal justice bills, but Bobby Scott has one that I think is really a good one. There's a consensus actually on the Hill to try and get something done with this. This may be one of the few bills that we can have bipartisan support and actually get something done, because the Republicans, they might not be in it for the right reasons, but the budgetary concerns, That's moving them in. We want to try and stop the mass incarceration because it's devastating our communities. So I think there's a chance to get something done, and I think I've got a unique background as a former federal prosecutor and elected state prosecutor to come in and help work that through. And I've already got the Hill experience too. Congressman John Conyers, who's the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, was my first boss in politics in 1987.
Thank you.
Public safety, perhaps the most important responsibility of government at every level. But we are not going to arrest and incarcerate our way to save neighborhoods. We're going to do it through education and opportunity. Mass incarceration from the 90s, you've seen a lot of it in Baltimore City as well, has had a devastating effect on those who have been incarcerated, particularly as they try to re-enter and reestablish themselves in the community. Over the last 2 years, we have reduced recidivism in Maryland from about 50% to 40%, but there are states that have recidivism rates down to 20%. I'll support appropriation legislation that improves on recidivism across the country. It means transitional housing. It means employment services. It means often drug and alcohol addiction treatment and counseling services. One proposal that I have offered when I was running for governor, and I certainly will champion it as a member of Congress, is to give preference points to those that want to do business with the federal government. When you are competing for a contract, if you hire ex-felons, okay, you will get a preference point. So that this way, we're putting men and women who are trying to re-enter society back to work. It doesn't cost the federal government a dime. We're spending money on technology and toilet paper. So let's do it with companies that understand we've got a responsibility to help reduce the recidivism rate and give these mostly men and women an opportunity as they try to re-enter our community.
Thank you.
My interest in this is making sure that justice gets done. My website is justiceandliberty.us. First thing that the Constitution promises is that we want to establish justice, and the last thing is to ensure the blessings of liberty. So we need to make sure that our laws are just, and that those who violate those laws are properly prosecuted and then incarcerated as needed to, that they serve their time and then they're restored. So I'm involved in a faith-based group called Prison Fellowship that deals with restorative justice. My campaign manager runs a prayer ministry where he goes to the prisons and deals with at-risk youth and makes sure that they are on the path to get out of prison. And so I will definitely work with the community to make sure that nobody is in prison that ought not to be in prison, and that the destructive policies that exist are reduced. I would like to see less laws. I would like to see more of these issues returned to the states, and the first thing I would do, therefore, is examine, are these federal laws or are these state laws that we're talking about? Because where does the federal government get off telling these individuals that their crimes rise to the federal level? If they don't cross state lines, they don't belong in the sphere of this federal government, which is what we're doing.
Clarification, that means you're against 3 strikes, that means you're against the difference between crack and powder cocaine, is that what you're saying?
From what I understand about the laws you're talking about, I am against those.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Look, for the last 9 years, I have voted to decriminalize marijuana. It doesn't make sense that if you get caught with less than 10 grams, now you have a criminal record and you can't find work. I'm on record I voted to restore the rights of felons to vote. That was the right thing to do. We override the governor's veto. All right? We have a bill right now. It's called Justice Reinvestment, which will save the state $247 million. What does it do? It puts money into drug addiction and behavioral health. Do you know that more than half of the people in jail have some type of drug addiction or mental health issue? That's where they're going. They're not getting the proper treatment. We're also looking at mandatory minimum. We have to look at that. We have to get rid of some of that. Do you know that 70% of the people that are incarcerated in Maryland jail, 70% are African American? Did you know that more than 85% of the people that get mandatory minimum in Maryland are African American? That is unacceptable. We need to invest in our community. We need to create jobs. We need to give people a sense of pride and keep them in the community so they don't go back and the recidivism rate is lower. That's my record. I'm a former public defender and I'm a former prosecutor. I work with Eric Holder. I understand the criminal justice well. And those are the kind of issues that I will continue to work in Congress if you give me an opportunity. I'm not just standing here telling you I'm going to do. I've done, and I will continue to do. Thank you.
As an avid mentor and coach of many young boys and throughout our community, I've worked with these young fellas, and let me tell you, when you don't have your needs met, when you lose hope, when you don't have a good job that pays a livable wage, then you might be prone to do anything. So what I want to do is to partner with the community to create good paying jobs that will pay a livable wage. But also, we have to incentivize employers to make sure that if they're able to hire a returning citizen, that they get a tax incentive for doing that. We also must repeal mandatory minimums because it disadvantages our community. But we also have to make sure that we're investing in early childhood education to make sure that we can cut off the pipeline to prison. So when we build a foundation of stabilization, when we are creating strong families, when men are able to be at home with their children to be able to be what they see, we are beginning to create strong communities, strong families. We meet people's needs. We provide them with affordable and accessible housing. We provide them with good paying jobs. We provide them with a great opportunity and a pathway to a good education. That's when we can begin to cut the pipeline to prison. That's when we can begin to stop the mass incarceration of people that have been historically disadvantaged by our unjust justice system.
Okay. President Obama has recommended that we make the two-year community college free. Bernie Sanders has said every public university should be free. And Secretary Clinton has said that we should have tuition free, but have some responsibility for students to pay as they go. So my question to you is, what plans do you have to make higher education more accessible and affordable and get rid of this onerous college debt that is killing our kids?
Number one, I think that, I know that burden very well. I told you, I actually just came home from Hampton University today. I know that burden very, very well. Number one, we need to eradicate or eliminate interest rates on student loans. Number two, for our teachers, for teachers that have, and I call this a National Service Corps. So if you serve in the military, or if you go and teach in our schools, or if you serve as a law enforcement officer, that should eliminate or eradicate your student loans. That is the way I think we should do this. I agree with the president on free community college. I do not agree with Bernie Sanders that everything should be free. Because it's not free. Taxpayers have to foot the bill. And so I don't want to put any more burden on taxpayers, particularly the middle class that is already very strenuous and leading more people to go into the lower class, or into poverty, I should say. And so let's make sure that we are providing a pay it forward. Let children go to college, and then they come home and they get a good paying job, so they become entrepreneurs and they create jobs. And then they're able to pay back into the system. They're able to reinvest back into that system. So I call that a National Service Corps, for people to be able to gain access to education, and then they reinvest in that same system that they benefited from.
Thank you. I agree with the president that community colleges should be free. But the fact is that community college is not enough. A 4-year degree is not enough. Most people now, they need a master's. So what happens is that you go to college, you graduate with an enormous amount of debt. We're creating this income divide because now you can't even afford a car or buy a house. And that's why you have such a big disparity between those that have and those that do not. The middle class is eroding. And why do I relate to that issue? I have 3 kids. My son is a senior in high school. He just got into the University of Maryland. So my husband and I are deciding how we're going to pay for it. We were lucky. We opened a 529, but guess what? Not everyone can open a 529, right? I have 2 daughters. They're 15. They're in the 10th grade. Yes, I have 3 kids in high school. Yes, I'm going to have 3 kids in college. So I know it well. So what we need to do is we need to allow people an opportunity to refinance their debt like we do our mortgage. We don't allow that now. And we need to be able to give incentive to businesses to hire college grads and give them a good pay so that they can make ends meet. Thank you.
I guess I have to be the one to throw the dash of cold water in everybody's face, because nothing is free. And when you create a government, you created it, as I said before, with the consent of the government. It is only supposed to do the things that you tell it to do. We told it what to do in the Constitution, and education is not one of those things. Now, when we talk about making free college or anything else that you want for free, what you're really talking about, like Mr. Christopher said, you're taxing the people to do this. And if you say, therefore, the community college or all college or master's degrees need to be free, you're going to pay for it. But here's the bigger problem. Not everybody needs a college degree. Go to VOTech, learn a trade, get a certification like I did, and learn how to work on computers. And that will cost you infinitely less money, and you can go and make a lot more. Look at our richest people. Bill Gates does not have a college degree. He's got honorary degrees, but he dropped out of college and went and started a business. Rush Limbaugh, no college degree. This is the fact of America, that you can make it and you can be successful without a college degree if you are willing to work hard. So what happens when you make college free is you make it a requirement now for everyone to go all the way through 4 years of college. You make that free, now they got to get a master's degree. You make that free, then they got to go get a PhD. You're making it more expensive.
Clarification, so you're against you're against changing the interest rate for student debt. That's a big problem.
I'm for anything that reduces the tax burden on people, like Spending Melnick said, the 529, that's a tax shelter, so you don't have to pay taxes on the money. I'm all for that.
Okay. Oops. Yep.
You know, no longer is we all know this, is a high school diploma enough. You're not going to be able to get a big family supporting job with a high school diploma. You need higher education. For some, that may mean a community college degree. In an academic program, that might lead to a 4-year degree. For some, it may be a community college education that is focused more on vocational training. But a high school diploma is not enough. I chaired the Prince George's County Board of Trustees at the community college and saw phenomenal growth and development in young people and incumbent workers coming back. So yes, I support President Obama's initiative for tuition-free community college. We do it in Garrett County. If Garrett County in far western Maryland can provide tuition-free community college, I think we can do it not only throughout all of Maryland, but throughout this country. I commend what the President has done to expand Pell Grants and also to remove the middleman to help reduce interest rates. We've got to build on that so that Pell Grants are 12 months out of the year, so that non-traditional students also have access to Pell Grants. But I also think, and I agree with the ability to refinance student loans. We can refinance so many things in our lives. I also think that institutions, colleges, have to have more at stake. If you have a higher than average default rate on student loans because your graduates are unable to secure employment, you've got to have skin in the game. So that may mean reducing federal aid to that institution or requiring that institution to help those students. How are we going to pay for it? We're going to increase taxes on the largest corporations and the wealthiest Americans. That's how we're going to pay for it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm living this. I've got 6 kids. And, 3 got in college. I've got 2 in college right now. And it's a heavy burden. There's no question about it. And I think we've got to do more to try and release that burden so that kids will go through school and not feel like they're putting themselves and their families in indentured servitude. So free community college, big step in the right direction. I support the president's approach. Support a lot of the things we've talked about here. But there's another piece I want to mention. Some of these universities have multi-billion-dollar endowments. Okay? I think, for instance, it's $15 billion. There's no reason that they shouldn't be using more of that money to help pay for low-income low-income kids going to school. And he mentioned Bill Gates a minute ago, dropping out of college. But Bill Gates' father was the wealthiest lawyer in Seattle when he dropped out of school. Most of us don't have that kind of backdrop. And by the way, were any of you surprised to hear that Rush Limbaugh didn't go to college? Yeah, the light bulb went off, right? But look, we've got to find ways to help kids get through college. They need to go to college in many instances. They need to come out without $100,000, $200,000, $250,000 in debt. And we've got to remember that grad school, lawyers, doctors, and the like, I've got kids that are that age deciding not to go to grad school because it's $75,000 a year. And if you go to law school, it's like 100 med school. I didn't even calculate the numbers. I said, son, just go get a job, man. You're living back home with us right now. You can't afford another $80,000, But seriously, we have to make sure that we give them the ability to get their schooling with a reasonable cost, reduced interest rates, and the like.
Okay, quick question to everybody. One of the things that we didn't mention was that part of the problem with Senator Sanders' free public education is he didn't have a carve out for HBCUs, who are private institutions. So it would probably, as Congressman Coburn said in South Carolina, obliterate the HBCUs. So whatever happens with the next president, if there is some movement towards free public education, will you support legislation for a carve out for the HBCUs? Yes or no?
Yes, my daughter attends an HBCU.
As a member of the Black Caucus for 9 years, I fought hard to make sure that we give our historical Black universities their fair share. So absolutely yes.
If it involves cutting taxes, yes. Otherwise, if it comes at the expense of the taxpayer, no.
Yes. Yes, and I think it's critical. Historically Black colleges need to get the research and development dollars that make Johns Hopkins and the University of Maryland, some of these other schools, multi-million dollars every year. They get hundreds of millions of dollars through federal contracting. HBUs get shortchanged on that year after year after year. We've got to change that.
Okay, this will be my last question before we open it up to the audience. The issue of reparations for the African American community to address the impact of slavery has been brought up during this campaign cycle, thanks to the great author Ta-Nehisi Coates, who challenged Bernie Sanders on that, and I guess he got the right answer because he endorsed it. Now, since 1989, Congressman John Conyers, as you know, has introduced legislation to appoint a commission to study the issue of reparations for Congress. Do you support Congressman Conyers' call for the commission? And as a member of Congress, will you sign on to his bill as a co-sponsor?
1 minute.
Yeah, well, I got a minute? Okay. In fact, I was working for him when he did the bill. So, yeah, but look, do we really need a commission to tell us that, the poverty and destitution that came out of slavery and segregation, needs to be addressed in an across-the-board way? So to me, yeah, okay, we can have the commission because we might need to do that to build a political constituency to get it done. But we know it's needed, we know it's appropriate, we know it was earned, because if you look at other types of reparations for other communities, that happened a long time ago. The key, I think, here is to figure out, A, how to get the money, and B, where it should go. And so I favor sort of broad-based approach to making sure that especially low-income African Americans get assistance. Some of the things we were talking about, education, pre-K, early childhood, going into neighborhoods like West Baltimore where you had the riots and using the money to address those needs immediately, I favor giving that to those communities. Glenn Ivey and his kids are okay. I'm willing to pass my reparations on to somebody else. And I think that's true for others. We need to make sure that the people who have the immediate need now get what they need.
So the answer is yes. For me, this is like the Black Lives Matter question. Because for 400 plus years in this country, Black lives haven't mattered. And that's why we have those disparities, those gaps, those inequities that exist in our criminal justice system, in our schools, in our economy. So yes, I do support reparations, and I'll take Mr. Ivey's word on it that we don't need a commission, because he's worked on it. I do think that payment needs to go not only to individuals and families, but also go to institutions, whether it's schools like HBCUs, whether it's Title I schools, whether it's nonprofits that focus on the acute
needs of the African American community to build capacity, educational, employment, and other capacities. So I'm a big supporter of it. And I do believe that not only individually, but also institutionally to help build capacity so that it's not just a reparation that solves a short-term need, but a lasting legacy.
I'm a little confused.
Yep.
You co-sponsored the legislation?
He worked for Congress.
You would you as Congressman? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotta get it right.
I just want to say real quick that unless you're a millionaire or a billionaire, Rush Limbaugh is a lot richer than you. And I think that says a lot about what you can do without a college degree. To the question, with all my being, absolutely not.
So you wouldn't co-sponsor the legislation?
I would not co-sponsor it. I would not support it. General Sherman passed his order number 15 to give blacks 15 acres and a mule. It did not go into effect. We have had 150 years to recover. We have had 150 years to recover from slavery. Now here's the thing. Here's the thing.
Respect, please.
Yes, please.
I had a co-worker.
Be respectful.
She was an Indian, an East Indian. And she related the story to me about how her parents came to this country without 2 nickels to rub together. And now they have their own business. She has her own business. Her husband has her own business. Is it because she's the wrong skin color? Because guess what? She's darker than me. So it's time we stop complaining. No, I would not sponsor that bill.
All right, thank you.
I would support, yes, the legislation. You know, when you look at the inequalities of our communities of color, when you look at health, when you look at heart disease, diabetes, obesity, when you look at education, how our kids, you know, there's a big gap whether we pass these tests, whether we're prepared when we go to college. Okay, when you look, so you have health, you have education. When you look at home ownership as well, when you look at who gets the loans in certain neighborhoods and who does not, the fact is that there's no such thing as equal. Racism is alive and well. And we do matter. We black people matter. It is important. We shouldn't be an afterthought. And we're not asking for something that has not been done before because we've done it. And we should do it for our community as well. Thank you.
Yes, I would support the legislation. And I would support the legislation with some caveats. You know, you give people a lot of money, you give people this and that. I want to make sure that we have financial literacy attached to this legislation. I want to make sure that we have sensible riders attached so we can create institutions in the African American community that people like Wally H. Bates, you know, created here in Annapolis. And so I want to make sure that, yes, along with this legislation, that there is riders on this legislation to make sure that we're doing it wisely and that we're doing it with a lot of thought and that we have some prescribed desired outcomes attached to measurements. Yes, I would support the legislation.
Okay, want to thank our August group of congressional candidates. Very thoughtful discussion. Very well done. You're a credit to the race. We basically believe we've got excellent choices here. Thank you very much. Now we're going to move to the audience. William, you have 2 or 3 that you identified earlier. Go ahead. Please ask a question, not make a statement. Thank you.
My question is, with the issue of Black Lives Matter, would you support legislation that stated federal police must have, where there is a homicide, they must have outside, they must have outside investigation. A non-police officer, nor anyone who has ever worked on the police force like Canada does. Would you support such a bill?
Well, I'm not sure. I think that is I mean, I think that's far-reaching to say that, to support a bill, to say that nobody that has ever associated themselves or worked with police officers.
Been a police officer.
Who's ever been a police
So
officer?
you wouldn't have retired police officers doing the investigation, that's the whole purpose.
So, but I think it's important to make sure that we got people that are sufficiently trained and understand how to do investigations to work on it, so maybe there's gotta be some kind of experience attached with that. So, anyway, as I understand your question, dealing with Black Lives Matters, the reason that we have to have that conversation in the first place, because when we look at the disparities in education and in healthcare, and job creation, and home ownership, and small business ownership, that's why we have to have this conversation. And so, to make sure that we are addressing, I think what we're getting at is police brutality or the inconsistencies with law enforcement. I want to make sure that there are external and people that don't have a vested interest in that particular police department, whether it's a federal agency or whether it's a state agency, to make sure that they're getting the results that they deserve.
45 seconds.
Thank you. You know, right now in Maryland, after the issues in Baltimore, the speaker created a group to look at public safety and police, and I was part of that work group. We came up with 23 recommendations, and the recommendations call for transparency, psychological testing, reduces the Office of Bill of Rights as well, right? They used to have 10 days to be able to talk. That was one of the issues that we discussed, if I understand your question well, it's whether you should have an independent person doing the investigation. And I think that is appropriate in many cases. It would depend on the facts as well. So I would be supportive of something that creates transparency and that would allow for a process to be open for citizens to be part of it, which is what we're doing with our bill here in Maryland.
My desire would be to keep the issue as local as possible. One of the things we've gotten away from is the concept of localism, because we're federalizing everything. We've got police chiefs that are appointed by executives or mayors or someone who is not directly accountable to the people through elections. The way it ought to be is you should have your sheriffs. Your sheriffs are representative of you. Their deputies are elected and appointed to their offices by you. And therefore, if those agencies are not behaving properly, you can hold them accountable at the election.
Okay, but
the other side.
the question was, in the investigation process,
yes,
do you favor not having retired or police officers doing the investigations?
I would need to know more about exactly where this is coming from, because this sounds like a local issue. This does not sound like a federal issue. And as a federal representative in Congress, I would be saying, Governor Hogan, I would be saying, county executive, make sure you assign those people.
Right.
And if there is corruption, yes, I would want to make sure the corruption is eliminated. But the key thing, again, is holding those officials accountable to the voters.
Thank you so much for your answer.
45 seconds.
Yeah.
So, okay, start the time. In December, the president releases a task force on 21st century policing, and in it are a number of recommendations. But the gist of it is there needs to be more civilian involvement when it comes to recruitment, retention, training, and discipline of law enforcement. So, would I exclude anyone who had a past affiliation with law enforcement? Probably not. But in the commissions that I would support, they would have a minority voice, because they actually might bring some expertise. I certainly wouldn't want to see the commission made up of a majority of those who are affiliated with law enforcement. But the key is citizen involvement. True, independent citizen involvement whose only interest is reliable accountability, where you can hold law enforcement accountable. Having said that, I want to emphasize, we have to support our law enforcement. They're doing a great job. There is a number of bad actors in every type of organization, independent boards help us root them out.
Let me talk a little bit about how we did it in Prince George's County, and you can compare us with other jurisdictions too. But in Prince George's, we were the first to get convictions for police officers for using excessive force. And we did that in two ways. One is I put some of my best prosecutors on those cases. But the second, and I want y'all to hear this, the police chief assigned his best detectives to those investigations. And so when they were done with the case, not only did we get indictments, we got convictions. And so you need, as Mr. Christian suggested, you need investigators that really know what they're doing. And they have to be outstanding, because I guarantee the police officers will have the absolute best defense attorneys available. So if you look at Baltimore City right now, you know, I was pleased with the charges that were brought. I thought the city was impressed with that. But the attorneys they're giving them fits because they're doing outstanding work on the defense front. You got to have the best possible available to make the job done, get the job done.
Okay, waiting to get somebody else. Okay, Mr. Eads.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I have two quick questions.
One
Number
question, Robert.
Would y'all support the stop the dismantling of HUD? Second is, would y'all support the fact that we need Spanish starting at pre-K because of the influxuation of Spanish coming into this country? We're doing everything to accommodate them, but our young kids are not learning Spanish at an early age to compete with them.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chill.
Respect. Thank you.
Respect him.
35 seconds, please.
Not only would I want to prevent the dismantling of HUD, I think you want to expand it and protect it. My father worked at HUD for a period, and I know that it can make a critical difference. One of the units there helps with financing of houses, for example. I think it's a critical piece. Also does a lot of good work to fight discrimination in housing and the like, partnering with the Department of Justice. Second question was what? Spanish in schools?
Yes.
Something like pre-K, all language
I tell you what, I've got two kids that did immersion. They did French immersion. I thought it was outstanding because they learned it early and it's been great for them. My daughter speaks 5 languages, and one of the ways she did that was she started early. And so I'm all for it.
What's the time on this, 35?
35 seconds.
So, yes, I support Spanish language and other foreign language learning at the earliest age possible. And I'm glad to see that in many schools that age level is getting lower and lower. On HUD, certainly would oppose the dismantling of HUD. Not only does it fight discrimination in housing, but we all know that we've got a real big challenge with delivering affordable housing, not just to seniors and veterans, workforce housing. HUD plays a big role in that. So not only would I oppose the dismantling, but I'd also support increasing the federal tax credits for affordable housing development.
These are local issues. My cousin deals with pre-K Spanish instruction. She does exactly that, and this is something we can do within our communities. We don't have to push it all the way up to the national level. The second part, Constitution. This is you telling us what to do. You didn't put anything in here about housing and urban development. If you do want to do that, amend the Constitution, do it the right way. Yes, I have read Uncle Tom's Cabin, and it's important that people know that Uncle Tom was a Christian who sacrificed himself so that 2 slaves could be free, and let Sambo and let Quimbo beat him down and die so that people could be free. That's what I'm doing.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, to the first question, I will protect HUD. You know, there are many people in our communities that are not able to get a house, get an apartment, cannot even afford the rent. It is important that we protect it, that we expand it. In addition, yes, I agree with teaching Spanish. You know, many countries, kids graduate knowing 2 and 3 languages. How are we going to compete with this economy? We need to do it. Thank you.
I support protecting HUD. HUD provides an extremely important service for our seniors and our veterans. And I also not only support Spanish in early childhood education, but an array of foreign languages to broaden experiences for all of our students.
Okay.
As a veteran of the Vietnam War, and as a senior citizen, and as we all know, administration has been saying work for the past 10 years, and you younger veterans who are coming up, what do you want to be able to do to make things better and to get that VA system for all the problems that they have had? You know, I ain't got to tell you, what is it that you can do to try to make it better, or you to get rid of it or start something else? I want to hear that.
30 seconds, please.
Well, that's gonna be really hard in 30 seconds, but sir, number one is, we've got to make sure that we're taking some of these VA hospitals and we can integrate them into community hospitals so our veterans can get more responsive medical treatment. Number two is, I believe that we have to get rid of some of these people that have been serving in the VA for 50 years. They've stagnated the organization and it stops progress. Number three is, we have to be able to leverage workforce development for veterans when they come home. We have to make a commitment to these veterans and their families that we're going to take care of them when they come home, and that means affordable housing, that means responsive medical treatment, and that means us fulfilling the commitments that we made to them when they signed up to serve our country.
Thank you. I will make sure that